Master Pancake's John Erler here, and we are going to recap what happened previously on the Indiana Jones series. In 1981, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas teamed up to create the very first Indiana Jones adventure, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The part of Indiana Jones was almost given to a hot young Tom Selleck.
Look, I did what I did. I don't expect you to be happy about it. But maybe it can do us both some good.
Why start
Just
now?
shut up!
Who at the last minute had to turn down the role due to his commitment to a new CBS television show called Magnum P.I. They had to settle for Lucas's old buddy Harrison Ford instead. Ford plays Indiana Jones, a professor of archaeology so dreamy that every single person in class, including his faithful associate Marcus, wants him to conduct a personal excavation on them. Everyone, that is, except one disgruntled student with an apple. No doubt a fan of Tom Selleck. In his spare time, Indy travels to very specific places like South America, where he and his faithful assistant, Spider-Man 2's Alfred Molina, in an origin story that explains why Dr. Octopus hates spiders so much, locate and recover priceless archaeological artifacts, then lose them to clever and unscrupulous treasure hunter Belosh.
Belloc.
Back at school, federal agents from Army Intelligence inform Indy that the Nazis are searching for the lost Ark of the Covenant, famous from the Bible for holding the 15 Commandments.
The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 15. 10 commandments.
The Nazis want to use the Ark as a super weapon and have begun looking for it in Egypt. Indy travels to Nepal, where he reunites with his old girlfriend Marion Ravenwood,
Indiana Jones,
who has a medallion that is a very important clue for finding the Ark. Marion owns a bar and is essentially a professional drinker, and a very resourceful one at that. Indy and Marion head to Egypt with the medallion to try to beat the Nazis to the Ark. They meet up with their local friend Salah, played by John Rhys Davies, who owns an apartment in Cairo where Marion continues drinking and is visibly upset when a drink gets spilled.
Oh no.
Nazis and their henchmen attack Indy and Marion in a marketplace. Marion is kidnapped and appears to be killed in an explosion. Indy pays tribute to Marion by doing what she would have done, drinking, which sends him into a sadness so deep that he doesn't notice the one time traveler strolling down the street in blue jeans. Turns out Marion is alive and being held prisoner in the tent of Indy's arch rival, Belosh.
Belloc.
Marion attempts to escape by, you guessed it, getting into a drinking contest with Belosh.
Belloc.
The plan would have worked too, if not for the timely arrival of Major Tote and the world's most BDSM coat hanger. Meanwhile, Indy and Salah locate the Ark, which they proceed to remove very carefully from its resting place. Belush
Belloc.
locates where Indy and Salah have been excavating, appropriates the Ark,
So once again, Jones, what was briefly yours is now mine.
and seals Marion and Indy in the tomb, which is filled with Indy's greatest fear, commitment. JK, snakes,
Why did it have to be snakes?
which fortunately are mostly harmless, dead, or fake. In an attempt to escape, Indy knocks over a priceless Egyptian god statue. Anubis would happen, but ultimately is able to find an exit from the tomb. Indy chases the truck containing the Ark on horseback. Indy slides under the truck. Indy commandeers the truck. Indy hides the truck. And Belloc and the Nazis in pursuit are left spinning their wheels, and for some reason, Major Tote in the shotgun seat magically turns into an empty pile of laundry. Marion, Indy, and the Ark board a ship for London, the absolute best place to store appropriated national treasures. On board, Marion and Indy explore their erogenous zones, starting, of course, with the elbow, and moving on from there. But just when you think they're about to conceive a baby Jones, Indy falls asleep just shy of the finish line. Nazis board the ship, steal the Ark, kidnap Marion, and head to an unnamed and geographically impossible Greek island somewhere north of Crete. where they meet up with Indy again, who followed them by riding on the periscope of the Nazi submarine all the way from Egypt, I guess? The Nazis capture Indy and take the Ark to the middle of nowhere so they can give their biblical superweapon a test run. But it turns out Old Testament God isn't fond of Nazis messing with his stuff. So God pulls a Ghostbusters on everyone in sight, melting faces and turning Tote into an actual candle. Indy and Marion survive by closing their eyes and doing absolutely nothing. Back home, Indy meets with the military intelligence guy from Star Wars from the beginning of the movie, who tells Indy that the Ark will be rigorously examined by top men.
Top men.
Which excludes Indy because, as we found out on the ship, Indy is clearly a bottom. Indy is upset, so Marion comforts him the best way she knows how.
Come on. Buy a drink.
Indy responds the most romantic way he knows how, by offering her the body part he always leads with. The Ark, meanwhile, is put into storage in an undisclosed Amazon warehouse, not to be seen again until the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The next movie in the series came out 3 years after Raiders, but took place 1 year earlier, in 1935, so Temple of Doom is actually a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is important because we see a slightly different Indy here. He seems to be conducting an illicit trade, the funeral remains of Narachi, in exchange for a diamond. No concern for giving Narachi's ashes to a museum. As far as we can tell, Indy is out for fortune and glory,
kid. Fortune and glory.
Temple of Doom contains multitudes, truly some of the best and the worst parts of the franchise, as follows. Best part, the terrific opening sequence that is both an action set piece and a tribute to Busby Berkeley musicals of the 1930s.
Anything goes.
Anything Goes is both the name of the song and the theme of the movie. Worst part, the character of Willie, who was written as a screaming, complaining, preening nuisance.
I burnt my fingers and I cracked a nail!
Kate Capshaw does what she can with the role she was given,
I'm not bad. I'm just drawn that way.
but it's hard when the writer seems to enjoy torturing your character for fun. Best part, Ke Huy Quan as Indy's sidekick Short Round is a fantastic addition to the series.
Hold on to your potatoes!
In his debut performance, a 12-year-old Ke Huy Quan keeps up with the Jones and often steals the show from his more experienced co-star.
Hey, Dr. Jones, no time for love! We got company!
Worst part, the racist depictions of other cultures. After being kidnapped by Lao Che, our three heroes crash land in India where they are hosted by poor villagers whose children have been kidnapped and whose sacred Shankara stone has been stolen. All the sequences in India had to be filmed in neighboring Sri Lanka because the Indian government read the script and said no to the depictions of Indian culture involving child slavery, black magic, and human sacrifice. And let's not forget the dinner scene where the Indian hosts regale our heroes with some amazing local dishes that would have made Anthony Bourdain say, "Forget it." Enjoy your pizzas, everybody. Best part? Thirst Trap Indy. Harrison Ford has always been easy on the eyes, but Temple of Doom Indy is hotter and sweatier throughout much of Temple of Doom, and often shirtless and sometimes half shirtless, which is apparently a very specific kink. Worst part, did we mention this movie was dark? It got a PG rating, but the reaction to the scary and violent content in Temple of Doom and Gremlins caused the MPAA to issue a new rating that was harder than PG and softer than R. In one scene, Indy becomes an evil zombie after being voodoo dolled and forced to drink a cup of blood, then slapped Short Round. Is there a rating between PG-13 and R? Because we also see sinister cult leader Mola Ram literally removing a beating heart from the chest of a sacrificial victim. That's a heart R right there. Best part, this movie has heart. The figurative kind. Tearjerker moments in the Indy franchise are few and far between, but there's nothing that'll start the waterworks faster than the scene where Short Round pleads with hypnotized Indy and declares his love for him.
Indy, I love you! Wake up, Indy! Wake up!
Or the scene when a whole town of kidnapped children and the Shankara stone are reunited with their parents. Looks like Indy has traded in fortune and glory for public service and returning cultural artifacts to their rightful owners. And now the thrilling third installment, 1989's Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. We open on a Boy Scout trip to Utah in 1912. River Phoenix plays high school-aged Indiana Jones, and he's a great choice because he already played Harrison Ford's son in 1986's Mosquito Coast. And also, he does a good grumpy Harrison Ford impression.
Everybody's lost but me.
Young Indy comes across a small group of Tomb Raiders dressed as Newsies and late 80s era U2, led by a man in a Party City Indiana Jones costume, who have found the legendary Cross of Coronado, causing young Indy to angrily mutter the catchphrase that sets the tone for The Last Crusade.
It belongs in a museum.
He steals the cross from the Indy lookalike, setting off a mad chase over the plains and across a circus train, which is jam-packed with Indiana Jones origins. We see how Indy acquired his fear of snakes. To fight a lion, Indy grabs what would soon become his weapon of choice. Then he accidentally gives himself a scar with that weapon. A rhino horn also comes perilously close to Indy's junk. Does this make Indy canonically rhinocerosophobic? Young Indy manages to momentarily escape, but once he gets home, he finds that the Joshua Tree gang has conspired with local law enforcement to make him surrender the cross to Spirit Halloween Indiana Jones, who proceeds to give Kid Indy some very important advice.
You lost today, kid. But it doesn't mean you have to like it.
And then gives Lil Indy yet another foundational item in the Indiana Jones canon, the hat. But that's just the prologue. The main story this time around involves Indy's dad, Henry, played by Sean Connery, a medievalist who has gone missing while searching for the Holy Grail, a benefactor named Donovan, and Elsa, an associate of Indy's father. Indy and Elsa head to a zany castle in Austria where Indy makes 3 discoveries. Number 1, his dad is there. Number 2, Elsa is a Nazi. Number 3, Elsa has been sleeping with someone Elsa.
I can't forget how wonderful it was.
Thank you. It was rather wonderful.
Indy and Indy Sr. escape the castle and embark on a series of adventures involving a dozen different modes of transportation, meeting Hitler, punching Nazis, and almost dying on a Nazi tank falling off a cliff. I've always loved you. JK, Indy's okay.
I thought I'd lost you, boy.
The gang head to the Temple of the Grail, but Donovan and Elsa have beaten them there. Donovan shoots Henry Sr. and tells Indy he's going to have to go get the Grail in order to save his dad. Indy uses his dad's diary to help solve a series of faith-based puzzles that indoctrinate Indy into Christianity by forcing him to kneel before God, spell God's name correctly in the Latin alphabet, and take a suicidal leap of faith for God. Then Indy must pass the final test, picking the true cup from a series of fine QVC-style phonies on display. Donovan barges in, picks one, and proceeds to turn into Doc Brown from Back to the Future.
Great Scott!
He chose poorly.
Indy then chooses the cup with the most based vibe and doesn't turn into Doc Brown.
You have chosen wisely.
He brings his dad some 700-year-old water, nurses him back to health, and the whole gang, except for Elsa, escapes as the temple interior crumbles. Before they ride off into the sunset, literally, we are treated to one final Indy origin story as we find out Henry Jr.'s nickname Indiana comes from the family dog.
We named the dog Indiana.
May we go home now, please?
The dog? You are named after the dog?
I got a lot of fond memories of that dog.
And now we move on to the next installment of the Indy franchise, one that a lot of people don't even acknowledge exists when referring to the whole series. No, not that one. It's a 1993 episode of the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles TV show in which Harrison Ford makes a short cameo called The Mystery of the Blues. It's Wyoming, 1950, and Indy and his friend Gray Cloud are on the run from some bad guys who are after a sacred native pipe that Indy has just rescued for Gray Cloud. The two friends take refuge in a snowy cabin, and Gray Cloud is poised to tell the story of this amazing native pipe.
This is probably the most sacred relic of my people's past.
Unfortunately, Indy makes it about himself.
Well, here's a sacred relic of my past.
Then proceeds to launch into a La La Land style story about his personal relationship to jazz. Thankfully, the goons return and interrupt Indy's story. They bust in, steal Gray Cloud's pipe, and leave. But instead of pursuing the villains, Indy just picks up his saxophone and begins to play. Has he lost his mind? No, So, Indy uses his bad saxophone skills to knock loose a pile of snow that overpowers the bad guys. And that, my friends, is the tidy little plot of Indiana Jones and the Big White Jazz Dump. Okay, well, let's look at 2008's Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which, look, I mean, the good news is it's much less racist and misogynist than some of the other indie movies. Now for the bad news. The plot, IJ and the K of the CS, is set in 1957, and to make sure you understand what decade we're in, the opening scene treats us to an actually fun game of highway chicken between a convertible full of teens bopping to Elvis on the radio and some army guys headed to Area 51. Because it's the 1950s, the baddies are the Soviets, led by Irina Spalko, aka Kate Blanchett, with an amazing bob cut, giving very strong Natasha from Bullwinkle.
I have it, darling. A contest. I like being evil because in 25 words or less.
So, we will do this, what is the expression? Old-fashioned way.
The Soviets have kidnapped Indy and his partner Mac because they want Indy to locate an alien corpse from Roswell hidden somewhere in this storage facility, which also just happens to contain something only the camera person notices, the Ark of the Covenant. Indy leads the Soviets to the alien corpse, is double-crossed by Mac, and escapes the clutches of the Soviets by taking some kind of G-force rocket train out of Dodge. Now, this next part you're either going to love or you're going to hate. Indy stumbles across a town full of cute mid-century modern houses and pristine 1950s Leave It to Beaver lawns. No, it's not the set of Don't Worry Darling. Turns out it's a doom town, a fake model village populated by mannequins and constructed to conduct nuclear bomb tests. And the air raid siren has just gone off. Indy thinks fast and climbs into a lead-lined refrigerator, which protects him from the radiation, I guess, but also catapults him thousands of feet into the air, thus killing him upon impact with the ground.
I will remember you. Will you remember me? Don't let your life pass you by. Weep not for.
Just kidding, folks. Indy's fine. But the radiation from the blast does penetrate inside the poorly lined fridge, turning Indy into Red Hulk.
Might we be seeing a Mr. Ford as the Red Hulk?
What is a Red Hulk?
After his Oppenheimer interlude, Indy returns to Marshall College, where at the train station he encounters a young Marlon Brando. Sorry, a young Samuel Witwicky.
Oh, no.
Sorry, a young Shia LaBeouf.
Running for your life from Shia LaBeouf. He's brandishing a knife, it's Shia LaBeouf. Eating all the bodies. Actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf.
AKA Mutt Williams. Mutt tells Indy that his mom and surrogate dad, Harold Oxley, an old friend of Indy's, found some kind of a crystal skull alien head down in Peru and have been kidnapped by the Soviets. Indy and Mutt head to South America to rescue his mom and Oxley. Oxley turns out to be John Hurt, who has been driven insane by the alien skull. For some reason, John Hurt never seems to have good luck with aliens.
Oh, no. Not again.
Mutt's mom turns out to be Marion from the first movie.
Indiana Jones. About time you showed up.
Mom!
Sweetheart.
Mom.
Marion and Indy are reunited after 20 years, so it's not a meet cute, it's a Mutt cute, because she reveals that Mutt is actually Indy's son, who they apparently conceived soon after the ending of Raiders.
Come on, buy a drink. You know, a drink?
Indy and the gang then head to the lost city of Akator to reunite the crystal skull with its crystal neck, crystal rib cage, crystal pelvis, crystal femur, crystal fibula, and crystal tibia. They locate some sort of crystal SCOTUS chamber containing 13 crystal justices. But our heroes have been followed by Irina and the Soviets. Irina takes the skull, puts it on the body of the headless skeleton, at which point the 13 skeletons merge into one giant alien. The Soviets get Burp Charlie burped by a giant ceiling fan, and Irina's head head explodes with all the knowledge she requested. Our four heroes are splooshed to safety, where they witness the giant crystal ship return to its crystal dimension, I guess? Indy gets his job back at the college, Oxley recovers from the crystal meth, and Marion and Indy finally tie the knot, because I guess he really is the Marion type after all. What happens afterwards? We don't find out the answers for another 15 years. The year 2023, which, funnily enough, is the crystal anniversary of the release of Crystal Skull. And that, my friends, is what happened previously on Indiana Jones.